Hey, you're tuned in to Tech Talk with VLink, an award-winning podcast brought to you by VLink Inc. In each episode, host Tracy Gardner sits down and talks trending tech with global business and tech executives.
Hi, everybody, and thanks for joining us for this edition of Tech Talk with VLink, the tech podcast where we talk to those in the C-suite of management about tech subjects near and dear to our hearts. Today, we're going to be talking about operational excellence realized, how today's tech leaders drive business value at scale. Our guest is Bill Gray. Gray brings over 20 years of real-world experience managing, deploying, and strategizing new ways of working for Fortune 500 companies, especially in healthcare. Bill's strategic vision helps customers deliver operational excellence, cost optimization, and a great end user experience, which is really important. Bill recently joined Citrix last fall as one of the principal evangelists for the platform. He is excited to be leading the field CTO organization and partnering with large customers to bring the value of Citrix to life. Bill was most recently with the Cigna Group, where he built a global Citrix strategy and implementation that led to over 500% adoption growth. That's amazing. Bill, welcome to Tech Talk with VLink. So glad to have you here.
Thanks, Tracy. It's great to be here, and thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, sure. I'm excited about this conversation. Let's start with what does operational excellence look like, Bill, in today's tech-driven organizations?
So Tracy, operational excellence is a big topic in the enterprise world these days, but it's pretty simple, right? It's about
Yeah.
remembering why IT exists in the first place to support the business. Operational excellence comes down to making sure our partnership with the business is strong and that we're perceived as being there to back them up, keeping things secure and running smoothly.
Yeah, that's definitely important, running smoothly. How do you think, Bill, that definition has evolved over the last couple of years?
Well, it's how the evolve technology has evolved inside of organizations. Technology is critical for everything a business does these days,
Yeah.
right? If the technology goes down or acts up, the entire business grinds to a halt, right? Think
Hmm.
about the last time you called a customer service line and, they said to you their systems were down. Not
Hmm.
only was it annoying, right? But now you have to call back later, you have to think about it again, and you've lost time, right? It's
Hmm.
IT's job to not just evolve, but to keep current systems running smoothly, or it's basically useless, right?
True.
This becomes even more important today, right? Now that we're looking at AI and adaptable systems for security, bouncing back from problems, and just making sure the business can move as fast as they want to and grow where they need to.
Yeah, that's really important for a lot of people. And Bill, now in your experience, where do most organizations fall short when trying to scale their operational excellence?
Well, many organizations struggle when they don't have a unified strategy, and especially between the applications and their underlying infrastructure. For example, an application team might collaborate with the business on a new feature, right? Some new thing they're trying to deliver, but they
Right.
don't coordinate with the front end teams and infrastructure on UI adjustments or different software that has to be put on a machine, right? This leads to a disjointed user experience when the application is deployed, and users encounter unexpected interface changes. So, while technical change management always has its challenges, managing the business impact of change is often much more complex, right?
Yeah.
Organizations that implement robust change management processes with communication across both business and IT much more likely to achieve the successful outcome that they're looking for.
Yeah, the communication is so key and in everything. And
Absolutely.
um, Bill, how do you think? What would your advice be to tech leaders who want to align their operational strategy with their business goals without slowing down innovation? I think that's a concern of so many people. Is, oh gosh, if we do all of this, it's going to slow down our innovation. That's not always true, right?
Yeah, absolutely. When you think about projects in IT, the most successful projects really hinge on clear and achievable goals.
Yeah.
And that comes through close collaboration with the business right from the outset of the project, right? Well, rapid innovation that's going on, today, particularly with AI-driven app development, has really allowed and accelerated feature implementation and really increased the capacity of IT to innovate. But leaders sometimes forget, especially in IT, that the business itself has a finite capacity for change. So,
Hmm.
we see that when businesses try to deploy things too fast and think they're being innovative, in the end, it actually ends up doing more harm than good, right?
Yeah.
So, effective business change management really necessitates a strong partnership, right? Aligning development speed and implementations with the business's ability to integrate those new features into their processes,
Yeah.
and in my experience, right, the most successful business projects really involved working upfront with the business so much, right?
Yeah.
And really defining realistic outcomes, requirements, and timelines together,
You're
not
it's
separate.
so true. So true. Like you said, that strong partnership. That's
Absolutely.
what it takes. When we think about emerging technologies and platforms right now, for you, which have had the biggest impact on improving operations at scale, would you say?
Well, what we're all talking about, right? AI, right? AI is really improving and has the potential to even further improve business operations,
Yeah.
particularly in app development, right? But we're really still in the early stages of even identifying the potential of it, right?
Hmm.
Well, AI can write code, right? The next frontier is actually leveraging AI for operational execution. And that's what you see in its infancy, right? And, we're talking about this all the time at Citrix, where we constantly consider how our platform focuses on secure user access to applications from anywhere, right?
Yeah.
So if humans can securely access any app on any device at any time, the question arises, right? Why can't AI do the same? And there's
Why
so
not?
much out there to be discovered and worked on with AI. And man, I couldn't be more excited about it. It's amazing. It
It,
really
it
is exciting to see
it
what's
is
happened.
amazing and scary kind of at the same time. And it's not something to fear, but it is nice being on the front end of it for sure.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
Bill, how do you upskill teams? In the intro we talked about the 500% adoption rate. I mean, that's amazing. How do you upskill teams to keep pace with tech-enabled operational models without creating burnout at the same time?
Uh, having led teams of over 100, professionals, I've always thought there's two types of teams out there, right?
Hmm.
Teams
Hmm.
that you can manage and teams that you can lead, right?
Hmm.
Teams that are managed, right? And we think about that, and they're really focused on getting things done, kind
Yeah.
of checking the boxes, hitting a target, just hitting a number, keeping an eye on those numbers, reacting to metrics, right? And think of them as super focused on just ticking those boxes. They work well when everyone knows exactly what they're actually doing, right? What buttons they're clicking, right? But is that really the high performing team out there in the industry today, right? The high performing teams are the ones that are truly led. And these are building teams that are in it for the long haul. Of course, they want to finish the work, they want to
Yeah.
execute. We all have metrics and we have things we have to deliver, but it's executing in a culture that helping everyone grow and really building a tight knit group around that. Leaders in this model, really focus on getting to know their team members, figuring out what makes them tick. And that doesn't just have to be in the office, right?
Hmm.
But it's about making sure they feel valued and part of the bigger picture, right? The bigger goals of the business, not just getting the technology part done.
Yeah.
Um, and what I've always focused on, and when I've built my team, is creating a supportive vibe, right? Where people want to be there and do their best for the person on the other end. And that may not necessarily be a customer, right? The customer, in many cases, is one of our peers in the business, right? Um, but
True.
it's when we look at that, putting it all together, right? Managed teams are about hitting targets, where teams that are led are about building people and culture.
Yeah.
And in my experience, the teams that are led are the ones that actually, in the long run, hit the highest performance, and the metrics come with that.
Yeah. The whole time you were talking there about the lead teams, I was thinking culture, culture, culture.
Absolutely.
That's really important in this day and age. People want to work in an environment where they feel valued and they're successful. And I think feeling valued drives success. Really.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
Can you share an example, Bill, of maybe where operational changes led to measurable business outcomes like revenue growth, cost reduction, or customer satisfaction?
Yeah. Oh boy, digging in the depths here. So quite a few years ago, probably about 8 years ago, I worked with the business on a project where, they came to me with the requirement of flexibility, where giving them a flexible technology experience could ultimately drive cost reduction, a
Mhm.
better external customer experience, which ultimately drove revenue growth. And we could put that together in a model, right?
Mhm.
So together, technology and the business, we developed that strategy and plan, and working with them throughout the life of the project. And the project went about 3 to 4 years,
Wow.
right? They stayed invested though, right? Both in time and dollars, right? Because it's time and it's the cost of executing
Sure.
a project, right? Um, but the part I found the most exciting about it was by having that close relationship throughout and that trust. It really helped secure the funding and keep the project going to deliver. Right? Did we have our bumps and ups and downs? Of course. Every big project over the course of years has ups and
Yeah.
downs. But I can't stress enough that when the business is behind you and you're not pushing something to them, when they are actually invested themselves and can put metrics and data together with the work, the project takes on a completely different dimension. And then you add the question you just asked about the teams, right?
Yeah.
Put a high performing team behind that, and that's when you start to have a lot of fun,
Yeah, it
right?
is, especially
That's
when
when
you
it gets
start to see
fun.
those results. Exactly. That is when it gets fun. Now, Bill, throughout the conversation, given all of your background and experience, if you had one piece of advice to give to a new CIO or CTO aiming to drive operational excellence, what do you think it'd be?
Culture, culture and cultivation. Cultivate strong relationships with both the business stakeholders, right? That side of it, but
Yeah.
also with the vendors that you need to deliver what you've committed to the business for, right? Look at vendors as genuine partners, right? From my experience as a customer before I joined Citrix as field CTO, right? I valued vendors who grasp their position within the broader IT landscape, that understand their place and can also kind of speak to that and relate to it.
Hmm.
Um, the vendors that focus solely on self promotion, technical widgets, I never considered them strategic partners, right? And that collaborative loop where business needs IT in the middle and then the
Hmm.
vendors that support IT are all recognized for, effective business support, that's the
Hmm.
winning formula.
Yeah.
And as IT leaders also, forgetting our role within this cycle really diminishes our value, right? The value that we
Hmm.
provide in IT and hinders
Yeah.
our contribution to the organization, which ultimately brings a perception of IT as tactical and just overhead, right? Just a cost to the
You
organization.
have to show value. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Bill, gosh, it's been so great. Any last thoughts or anything you want to say about Citrix or anything that you'd want to leave us with?
Culture, culture, culture. And, being on both sides of the customer and the vendor, we all have our place in IT. And when we all come together to provide a service to the business, we all win. And it's
Yeah.
a great experience, not just for, the people building products, the putting the solutions, putting the experience on the table, it's great for the entire organization.
Absolutely. Well said, Bill. Thank you so much for joining us for this edition of Tech Talk with VLink. It's been very insightful and a real enjoyable conversation, Bill.
Thank you so much, Tracy.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Tech Talk with VLink by VLink Inc., headquartered in Connecticut. We'll see you in the next one.